Talk Time with Little Scholars every Saturday. Come hear the scholars. We learn, we laugh, and we share our minds from peace building to technology, education, current affairs, and social life. Find us on YouTube, Afripods, and SoundCloud. We have got big ideas just waiting for you. With voices young and stories bold, together we shine, together we grow. It's Talk Time with Little Scholars. This is a project of Excellence Foundation for South Sudan. Let's build a world where young minds flow.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's resolution is all about schools should hire full-time counseling for mental health support. Before I outline my views, allow me to define the keywords. School refers to an institution where children go to learn. For example, Bright Light Secondary School, where we have acquired skills and knowledge. Hire means to pay or to use something for a period of time, especially a short period, and then return. Counsellors refers to a supportive person who addresses challenges and one's issues. Mental just refers to do with mind and thinking. Health, how well the body is. Lastly, support, which means to show a theory or statement that it is true. From the proposition side, I'm not alone. Allow me to introduce my fellow team members. I, in front of you once again, I'm called Private Juma, the first speaker from the proposition side, and I'll be handling points that talks about consistent support, accessibility of students, collaboration with staff, reduction of stigma, then improvement in academics. The second speaker from the proposition side is none than Honorable Joy Joan, and she'll be handling points that talks about early interventions and preventions, academic performance and engagement, addressing mental issues and stigma, then collaboration with families. The last speaker, who is the third from the proposition, is none than Honorable Jennifer Mata, and she'll be talking about accessible support and safe environment. Back to the motion, school should hire full-time counselors for mental support. Why do I say so? Yes, counselors are widely recognized as supportive persons who help in mental health support. Why do I say so? This is because of my following points of argument. The first point, I say that I'll be talking about the constant support, where I say that full-time counselors provide ongoing consistent support to students, allowing for the development of strong, trusting relationship, and this can continue to lead to more effective interventions and better outcomes from students. We also have the accessibility of students. Let's say that the full-time counselors make mental health more accessible to students in a way that they can provide immediate assistance during school hours, reducing barriers such as transportation and scheduling that may arise with other external services. Then also counselors help in the collaboration of staff. The collaboration of staff, where we say that full-time counselors, they can also work hand to hand with teachers, administration, and parents to give a supportive environment to the students. And my question to the person, how can they do so? Is by providing training and resources to staff on recognizing and addressing mental health issues. And this is where, like, when there is provision of guidance and counseling, because guidance and counseling, it helps students to reduce actual stigma by focusing on what they feel. Because there's fear of judgment in stigma. I say that stigma is just like something that is embarrassing when it's wrong. Actually, so when there is fear of judgment in students, they are unable to tell out to the counselors. But let me say, when counselors are not there at school, there is fear of judgment in students. But when counselors are there, they are there to support the students at school so that they can express out their feelings, what they are all about. Then we have reduction of stigma, where I say that the presence of counselors in schools help to normalize conversations about mental health, reducing stigma and encouraging students to seek help when needed. Yeah, I agree with that. Because when counselors are present at school, of course there's that normalized is that normalized conversation between them where the student is able to tell what is wrong that is feeling. With the help of the evidence, actually we got the research resource from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And it said that, and the study views that National Alliance Mental Illness has published various reports and studies that highlighted the impact of school-based mental health programs, particularly focusing on the role of counselors in reducing stigma around mental health issues. Allow me to submit my evidence via the table of the moderator to the judges to you, my lovely audience. In conclusion, we say that the evidence from NAMI, which is the National Alliance, Mental Illness and Similar Organization, underscores the importance of having a counselor in school as a means to reduce stigma with mental health by fostering an environment of openness and support. Counselors' perceptions and encourage students to seek help when needed. To my summary, I've talked about constituent support, we have accessibility to students, collaboration of staffs, and reduction of stigma. So I would like to say that I'd like to stop there by saying overall hiring full-time counselors in schools is a proactive investment in the mental health and well-being of students, which can have far-reaching positive effects on their lives and school community as a whole. Thanks.
That was the first position signed from the first day school. Next, we welcome the honorable speaker from the opposition side.
Maximum greetings go to the moderator, the secretary, timekeeper, the table of the diplomatic juries, opposers and proposers, invited guests, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, call me Atola Balkin, Senior 3 Art from Juba Diplomatic High School. Our motion of today is the school should hire a full-time counselor for the mental health support. Before I define the keywords, my ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce my teammates. My name is Atola Balki as the first speaker. The second speaker is Horrible Janjo, and the third speaker is Horrible Sarah Zakaria. Briefly back to the motion, ladies and gentlemen. A school is an institution where children require knowledge and instruction from the range of primary to high school. A full-time counselor, ladies and gentlemen, this is a professional person who is eligible to provide illuminating field within the school. Mental health issues, ladies and gentlemen, these are services or resources that aim in promoting emotional well-being of a person or addressing a mental health issues for an individual who is well. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go to my points, allow me to rebut on some points of my opponents came and say that these counselors they can provide a constant support. Yes, we believe they do provide counselor support. But if we are talking about counseling, ladies and gentlemen, our teachers can do those support more than these counselors. I handle this point through the moderator, by the judges, and back to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to oppose the motion because of our arguments. We are going to base our points of argument on the managing resources and part-time. Ladies and gentlemen, under that, allow me to talk about budget constraint. Hiring a full-time counselor, my dear ladies and gentlemen, this requires a significant financial resources that could divert to the funds of initiatives in areas within the school, such as academic programs, extracurricular activities. This could also, in the light of the movement, many schools have a fixed budget. Yes, fixed budget that are constant to teachers' training, offices, space, and tools. All these items require a substantial funding and a continuous funding. My dear ladies and gentlemen, we are not saying that a full-time counselor, it is bad. No, it is good actually to have in school. But let's take example of South Sudan, particularly the states of South Sudan. I believe the numbers of schools within the states are more than the numbers of these counselors that my opponents are talking about. Instead of us to have some limited resources, we rather use it to improve our quality education, to improve the school's condition, to improve our teachers' qualification. We are talking about the mental health issues. We are not talking about counseling. If it is counseling, our parents, our teachers can do that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is concerning a mental health issue. This needs a professional standard to come on these issues, ladies and gentlemen. As was written by one of the American lecturers, it said, a budget professional schools can lead to a development limiting counselors' budget roles, which means counselors can easily be updated from their work field due to the limited resources they have. I handle this point of mine through the moderator, by the judges, and back to the audience. To get the Following my dear ladies and gentlemen, allow me to talk about responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, a high school counselor may burden a rent of responsibility or vigilance that could be the result leading to the illusion of quality of a counselor. This makes this counselor to be exploited. He or she is susceptibility to wherever she's ought to be. Ladies and gentlemen, we are saying it is better for us to have a part-timer rather than a full-time counselor. This could be the school needs to look into activities that could promote emotional well-being of a student, such as debate clubs, music clubs, health clubs, groups clubs, and activities that will promote social interaction between the students. My dear ladies and gentlemen, if we are talking about hiring a full-time counselor, ladies and gentlemen, with this economic crisis of South Sudan, come on, make some sense. It will not have that sense, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why I was saying that strong and saying the school should hire a part-timer rather than a full-time counselor. I hand on this point of mine to the moderator, by the judges, and back to the audience. In my summary, I talk about the impact on resources management and part-timer. Under that, I talk about budget constraint. I talk about the school group. Ladies and gentlemen, in my conclusion, I will still stand strong as I told above by opposing the motion by saying that the school should not hire a full-time counselor rather than they should hire a part-timer. Otherwise, I raise my case. Thank you.
We welcome the second speaker from the proposition side. That is none other than Honorable Joy Wan.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Juliet Wanawa, SPM from Senior 1 class, and I'm here to propose a motion which says you should hire full-time counselor for mental health support. I agree with that. And before I go further, I would like to disagree with what my opponent talked of. She talked of teachers can even write counsels more than those counsels that will be brought to the school. But I would like to disagree with her. Some of the teachers are just teachers by profession. Some of the mental counselors want the problem when they saw something someone suffering from mental health condition. What do they do? They counsel that person accordingly. They're just profession by teachers, but not mental counselors. Mental counselors, they counsel people who are suffering from mental issues. I submit the point to the table of Mr. Honorable Chairperson, but I listen to my audience. Not only that, but also that's my point of argument under early intervention and prevention. Mental health counselors in the school can identify students suffering or struggle from mental health. For example, they will address such issues properly, and even they can then those negative impacts that have been put into the students' mental health issues. So before I go further, I would like to show my written document evidence. Here is early intervention. Here are some key pieces of evidence discriminating that early intervention by counselors here. I submit my point to the table of Mr. Honorable Chairperson, but I guess I'm doing my audience. Not only that, but also academic performance and engagement. What do I mean by academic performance and engagement? Mental health issues affect students. Why do I say that it affects students? It reminds students not to cooperate inside the class. Once the teacher is giving them something or giving them knowledge, they will not cooperate. That is one. They will not focus. They will not participate in the class. Even them to concentrate while the teacher is giving them something, they will not do that. And this, they have to. This counselor said the students to do what? You can talk more about it so that they will be able to what? Because the reason I'm focused. Before I go further, I would like to show my evidence. I submit my point to the table of Mr. Honorable Chairperson. God, again, something, my dear ladies and gentlemen. What do I mean by addressing mental health? You are not allowed. Addressing mental health issues. What do I say by that? Counselors can play a role in reducing mental health. What do I mean by that? It is rejected, please. Counselors can play a role in reducing the stigma surrounding by educating the staff, educating the community members. You are allowed.
Honorable Speaker, you spoke on academic engagement with students, right? The counselors are the ones who do that. Who teaches you in school? Is it a counselor? It isn't a counselor. A counselor is not the one who puts a pen in your hand and says, write A, B, C, D. A counselor is not the one who tells you, read what's in the blackboard, read it so you can pass exam. A counselor tells you, you need to pass exam, but we're talking about mental health, not exam prepare. A counselor will tell you, you know your mental health, you need to reduce your stress, talking too much and all of this stuff. But the teacher now here is the one who guides you through all of this.
Thank you so mental health issue. Who is supposed to give that person a counsel? Is it not that mental counselor who will be brought to the school? Counselors can play a role in reducing environmental stigma. They can educate the parents, and they can educate the staff, not only that but the community. But for example, when the counselors they are ones with the school, they can educate. After educating, they can create an environment whereby the students can go there, they can help very comfortable, without any fear of judgment. So I come in my front to tell everyone about the Father, you can do my once the counselors work hand in hand with the families, they will provide the support, but not the fear of judgment. After including that, or after doubling that, including the resources, the show of resources. Once they share the resources with parents, it will really help those ones who are suffering and never got help. So I stand in my point to the table of this honorable chairperson, while the elders and to my dear ladies and gentlemen. Now, before I summarize my points, I would like to say something small. They can create a school branch where students will have the field judgment. In my summary, how also and implementation of education, secondly, how beginner education. And this I focus directly to the hospital and the health one I focus against mental health issues. Not only that, but I would like to tell my opinion that we need to stand up by educating our parents, educating those staff, and also in order to reduce the stigma around them. What do I mean by that? I'm going to tell them that I'm going to stand up strongly, telling you, opposing you by saying that in the second coming of Jesus, I will stand up by saying that
At this juncture, we welcome the second speaker from the opposition side in the name of Joe Booth. You are most welcome.
In respect to the moderator, the secretary, the table of jury, the timekeeper, opposers, proponents, staff and guests, ladies and gentlemen. Before you is a student of Juba Diplomatic, here to oppose the motion that states schools should hire full-time counselors on mental health. I oppose the motion because of my following reasons. My point of argument is going to be on resource management. Before I go further, let me rebuttal some of the points that my fellows honorable spoke about. One of the fellows here came and said, contributing families, right? How does this contribution of families help on mental health? And we're talking about a counselor. We're talking about the presence of a counselor in the school, not the presence of a family in the school. The family has no use there. Putting a full-time counselor in the school. It should not be a full-time counselor. You said it yourself, okay, that's the point. You said families. Families are other ways that students can be helped. It's not a must to bring a counselor to the school so they can help you. Let me just dive into my point. So first I would like to talk on reduced scope of practice. Hiring schools should not hire full-time counselors rather than part-timers because of their area of practice. Their role is to offer advice on mental health on which they might lack the breadth of experts needed to address the diversity needs of students' population, limiting their effectiveness. So employing of them is a total waste of resources because teachers can do better simply because they were trained by a teacher and there is no point of putting another teacher on top of another teacher where resources are mismanaged. So schools should in fact use the available resources of employing full-time counselors on health facilities. That will benefit the people who are. That's why I'll keep saying we should not hire full-time counselors rather than part-timers for time being. Yes, through honorable chairperson, by the judges and back to the audience. Also, I'd like to speak of potential stigmatization. The presence of a full-time counselor might lead to stigmatization. This stigma leads to mental health. Schools should consider the social reality in many cultures and communities. Mental health is a taboo. Students might feel embarrassed to approach a school counselor, be afraid of being judged and bullied. May not trust the person enough to open up to the counselor, even though the full-time counselor is in the office. Students might never walk through that door. This indicates that the presence of a full-time counselor is a total waste of resources and has no impact. That's why I keep saying we should not hire full-time counselors rather than part-timers to help you people who have mental health issues for the time being. Through honorable chairperson, guide the judges and back to the audience. Not that, but also, I would like to speak of over-reliance on counselors. Schools should not waste their time in hiring full-time counselors because it creates over-reliance on them. This damages the teacher-student relationship. Instead, they should use the available resources. To create a supportive school culture. The relationship between the teachers and the students will greatly improve. The teachers can easily engage students in counseling as they go do I do before and after lessons are provided? Hope you have heard me. The teachers will now engage the students counseling as they quite do every time. When you make a mistake in class, when the class makes a mistake, the teacher comes and comforts people, says this, you shouldn't do it this way, or do it this way. That is the teacher giving counseling. If you don't know, that is what is called counseling. It's not a match for you to be someone who comes from out to come and sit and say, your mental health, you need to do something. And back to audience. In my summary, I have talked about limited scope of practice. Where I say schools should not hire full-time counselors rather than part-timers because of their area of practice. I also spoke on potential stigmatization, where I said the presence of a full-time counselor might lead to stigmatization, and this stigma leads to mental health. And lastly, I spoke on over-reliance on them, where I say schools should not waste their time in hiring full-time counselors because it creates over-reliance on them. Before I conclude, I would like to say, please, your teachers have helped you in life more than any counselor has ever done. So you need to give them that praise. And you don't need to bring another person to come and do their duty for them. You cannot bring your uncle to come and be the man of the house and your father is the house. Doesn't make sense. And I'd like to conclude by saying, you should not hire full-time counselors because it creates over-reliance on them. This damages the relationship between the teachers and students. Would you like your teacher to give you fail in all subjects? No. You wouldn't. You want your teacher to talk to you, motivate you, give you that courage. That will lead you in life, and that will never give you a mental health. And mental health, and no school except a person with mental health issues. So thank you, I've concluded and bye.
Next, we are welcoming the first speaker, the opposition side. That is none other than Jennifer Martha. The floor is yours. You are welcome.
In my first place, I would like to recognize the presence of the moderator, secretary, timekeeper, judges, negators, farmers, invited guests, staff. Not forgetting you, my dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm by the name of Jennifer Martha from S2 class, Bright Light student. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to affirm the motion that says schools should hire full-time counselor for mental health support, and I stand strong to affirm the motion. Before I go further, I would like to support what Mrs. Joy Joan says about early intervention. Regular early intervention. Full-time counselor provides students with assessive support while providing them with giving them advice. I submit my points to the table of the judges and back to the audience. Back to my point. Hiring full-time counselor for mental health support in school is a crucial step in promoting student well-being. For example, accessible support. Full-time counselor provides students with immediate access for mental health support, making it easier for them to take help when needed. Here are my evidence from the National Alliances. Increased utilization of services. School with full-time counselor report higher student engagement in mental health services. I submit my points to the table of the judges and back to the audience. Safe environment. Counselor create a safe space for students to express their feelings and concern, fostering emotional growth and realization. Here are my evidence from the National Alliances. Creating a safe environment involves various elements, and evidence can be drawn from different domains, including public health, education, workplace safety, and community well-being. I submit my evidence to the table of the judges and back to the audience. Rejected. In summary, I've talked about safety environment. In summary, I've talked about accessible support, early intervention, and safety environment. In conclusion, I stand affirm saying that schools should hire full-time counselor for student be strong.
At this juncture, we welcome the last speaker from the opposition side. That is none other than Honorable Sarah Zakaria.
My greetings to the moderator, secretary, adjudicators, timekeepers, the two parties of today's controversy, staffs, and to the audience. I am Sarah Zakaria, 23 art student here to oppose the motion and read. The school should hire full-time counselors for mental health support. And I would like to base my point of argument on resource needs. But before I go further, I would like to rebut to the point of the last time. We talked about safe environment. How comes that counselor makes a safe environment for students? Is the teachers, because the teachers are ever present for you in the classes and everyone, not the counselors. Well, I direct the point to the table of the presiding officer, the judges, and back to the audience. And allow me to engage right into my presentation. First of all, I would like to talk about the role of the family. To avoid wastage of resources, the school should understand the reality of mental. It is not only a school problem, it is a society and family problem that come to the school. The entire responsibility should not be placed on the school. Parents, guardians, religious leaders, and community play a critical role on the mental and emotional development of it. The school only support. Get this clear. The school only support. So if we rely too heavily on school to fix every emotional issue, ladies and gentlemen, are we not risking or ignoring the root cause in our houses or in the community? Thank you so much. I suggest a cooperative approach between the schools, mental health professionals, and parents is far more effective rather than putting the whole responsibility on one side. By pointing to the table of the presiding officer, where the judges and back to the audience. Furthermore, I would like to talk about smarter alternative to better resource management. In the start of the school, hiring full-time counselors, it is good for them to bring in more inclusive, flexible, and cost-effective solutions. For example, the school should train teachers who could recognize mental warning signs and respond to them with empathy. The school should also organize weekly or monthly visits by qualified psychologists who rotate around the school, hosting peer support programs, mental health workshops, parent seminars. This method seems more adaptable, sustainable, and affordable to each school size, needs, and culture. Dear ladies and gentlemen, this is the very reason I'm saying a part-timer is quite better than full-time counselor. Let's use the available resources very well. My point to the table of the presiding officer, where the judges and back to the audience. One of the points that I won't move on pilot shortage by the school should not hire full-time counselors because of shortage of qualified counselors. Even if there is resources, the question I am facing to all of you, are we having enough trained and learned counselors who could be working full-time in every school like our teachers? No! Let me clarify a point. In South Sudan, we have 11,120 schools. We have 503 counselors. Other schools, why are they going to get counselors if we are saying that each school should have a full-time counselor? A part-timer is quite better. We should understand that having qualified teams moving from school to school fulfilling the obligation quite better than that by demanding full-time counselors. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we may end up hiring underqualified individuals. At the end of the day, wrong advice would be worse than never at all. So I am saying that part-timer is quite better than full-time counselors. My point to the table of the presiding officer, where the judges and back to the audience. Presenting through points of argument. First of all, I talked about the role of the family, where the entire responsibility should not be. Secondly, I talked about smarter alternatives to better resource management, where a school should bring in other inclusive, flexible, and cost-effective solutions. And thirdly, I talked about shortage of qualified counselors, where a school may end up hiring underqualified individuals due to full-time counselor. In final analysis, which is my conclusion, dear ladies and gentlemen, the available resources should be used very well. We have teachers here, we can train them and they can counsel us. After all, counseling is all about talking to someone, right? It's all about talking to someone. So available resources should be used for creating a comprehensive learning institution to every learner. And that's why I rest my case. Thank you, sir.
The captain from the opposition side come and summarize, and also likewise from the opposition side. So the floor is yours.
Once again, it is a privilege and honor to stand before you. Okay, I've come back for my summary. That's why we are giving it to you people, that a part-timer is more better than a full-time counselor. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make this so clear. If it is like they are supporting only students, I believe in Juba diplomatic 99 teachers, they can be those counselors and they can support it. So why are we saying that they can only support the students? How? Doesn't make sense. Because I'm talking about a counselor within the school, not counseling the mental health issues. I handle this point through the moderator, by the judges, and back to the audience. They also talk about improving living standard. I'm sick with mental issues. Will they improve my living standard? Yes, I believe that. That's why we are saying that a part-timer is more better than a full-time counselor due to the limited resources we have as South Sudanese. I don't go outside the world. I be within South Sudan because my country is an example of those things. So I handle this point of man through the moderator, by the judges, and back to the audience. In my summary, as a first speaker, we base our point of argument on management resources and a part-timer. Under that, I talk about budget constraint, a stop grip. The second speaker, that is Honorable John Joe, talk about limited script of practice. The school should not employ a full-time counselor rather than a part-timer because of their areas of practice. He also talked about potential stigmatization. This praise of the full-time counselor may lead to a stigmatization and a stigma lead to the mental health issues within the school. Ladies and gentlemen, the third speaker talked about the role of the family. To avoid the wastages of resources, ladies and gentlemen, the schools undergo the reality of mental health. It is not only the school's problem, it is also the society and family issues that went to school. My dear ladies and gentlemen, we also talk about smartness initiative for the better resources management. Instead of hiring a full-time counselor, we approach more available, inclusive, and a cost-effective solution. Ladies and gentlemen, it is better for schools to have a multiple training team to visit thousands of schools within South Sudan. We also talk about shortages of qualified counselors. Ladies and gentlemen, a school should not hire a full-time counselor because of the shortages of qualified counselors. Even if the resources are there, my ladies and gentlemen, we should use the available resources instead of hiring a full-time counselor. In this case, I raise my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will welcome the captain from the proposition side to come and summarize.
It is not possible. So that's why we say that hiring full-time counselors at school is the best. They said something about reduced smoke. In my point, I said something about reduction of stigma, where I stated clearly that the presence of counselors in school can help normalize conversations about mental health, reducing stigma and encouraging students to seek help when needed. Of course, this is like an example of fear of judgment. Like when the student, of course, is having that fear, he or she cannot go to the teacher and explain. But with the presence of the counselor, he or she is able to go and explain what is fear. The first speaker, I said, I talked about something to support, where I said that counselors provide ongoing consistent support to develop strong trusting relationship. And I talked about the accessibility of students, whereby I say that the counselors make support, the counselors make mental health support more accessible to students. I also talked about the collaboration of staff. I say that the counselors can work closely with teachers to create a supportive environment for students. I also talked about the reduction of stigma, which normalizes conversations about mental health. Then there's improved academic performances. Yeah, it's true that it leads to better academic outcomes in the presence of counselors. Also, the second speaker, she talked about early interventions and prevention. Said that counselors can identify students struggling with depression, and she also talked about academic performance and engagement, whereby she outlined that mental health issues affect students from focusing in class. Exactly. Addressing mental health stigma, that's another point that she talked about, and she said that she explained it clearly that counselors can play a role of reducing the stigma surrounding mental health issues. She said that collaboration with families, but not contributions with families. So that was the point of correction from the second speaker. Then the last speaker, she talked about accessible support. And she explained that counselors provide students with immediate access. Yes, we agree with that. Then early interventions, she said that regular counseling can address mental health issues. And the last point, the environment. Counselors create a safe space for students to express their feelings. Students from Juba should not be the ambassador of change, saying that school should hire full-time counselors for mental health support. Conclusion, I say that I repeat myself that overall hiring full-time counselors in schools is a proactive investment in the mental health and well-being of students, which can have far-reaching positive effects on their lives and the school community as well.
You have been listening to Talk Time with Little Scholars, where young minds speak loud and proud. Catch us every Saturday on YouTube, Afripods, and SoundCloud, brought to you by the Excellence Foundation for South Sudan, giving children a voice, one episode at a time.